Hello, I'm Anthony Bourke, AB. Welcome to our interview today on drones, where we're talking about current aerial warfare drone technology, what we're seeing lately, and maybe what we will see coming in the future. And most importantly, is the U.S. military prepared and on the cutting edge of drone technology, or are we being leapfrogged by others? Today, I've got two superstar drone guests with me, Captain Jim Reining, and that is Navy Captain Jim Reining, retired, and Colonel Sean Navin, also retired. Both experts in this field and both people that can provide a lot of insights. Because Sean is my Air Force brethren, I'm going to start introducing you first. Service does have its privileges, Sean. And I want to just hit on some high points of your very extensive career and bio. Colonel Sean Navin is a highly experienced F-16 and F-15 fighter pilot. He started flying F-16s in Burlington, Vermont with the famous Green Mountain Boys of the 134th Fighter Squadron in Burlington, Vermont. He moved to California in the late 90s, where our paths first crossed with the 144th Fighter Wing of the California Air National Guard, where we flew F-16s together, and Sean ultimately flew F-15s. During his time in California, Sean served as the squadron commander of the 194th Fighter Squadron, as well as the vice wing commander of the 144th Fighter Wing. Colonel Navin finished his military career as the commander of the 163rd Attack Wing, where he commanded a group of 900 personnel that operated the MQ-9A Reaper drones in a number of different missions. He currently serves as the program director of CAL FIRE Amentum Aviation. It's an Air Force group where he is currently working to keep California safe from wildfires, including the LA fires over the past winter and a number of forest fires currently burning in California. Welcome, Colonel Navin. Great to have you. When I think of fighter attack wings, and certainly drone wings, I think of multiple squadrons. And in your 163rd Drone Squadron or wing, did you have a number of squadrons, and what was your mission?
We did. So there's several. Actually, there's two that are very specific, AB, and then there's one that we'll talk about here in a minute. So the first two are we were training both Air National Guard and Air Force MQ-9 drivers at our base at the 163rd. So we had a training squadron called the FTU, the formal training unit. So we would train multiple Air National Guard and Air Force pilots to get through the MQ-9 program. The second mission that the 163rd is charged with is a combat line. So the combat line, for those who don't know, the MQ-9, the Reaper, it's deployed all around the world. And the airplane needs to be line of sight to be taken off and landed. So if you don't have line of sight with the airplane, it doesn't know what to do. So we have connexes out around the world where there are people who take the airplane off and then they hand it off to us at the 163rd. So we pick up the airplane once it's airborne, and then we complete the mission anywhere. It could be any mission, quite frankly. And there's a lot of them out there. I don't know how deep we want to get into the mission set, but when people are disappearing off the planet, sometimes that MQ-9 probably had something to do with it. And then the airplane comes back to the field, wherever that might be, and it's landed by, again, somebody with line of sight on the airplane. And then we release the airplane back to them. So those are like the two primary missions of the 163rd. The third mission that isn't actually written into our program that we started doing in 2017 was we became an uplink downlink, which the MQ-9 has the ability to do, to film with the sensor to look at a fire. And then we would send the downlink of a real-time fire to the incident commander for the state of California. So they would get a 1.5 second delay, but they could see fire behavior from above, which for any of you who have ever been around a fire, if you're standing next to it, you have no idea where it's going because you have no perspective. But when you're above it and you can look down on it and provide the incident commander with hey, we have limited resources. Where am I going to put them? Well, the MQ-9 delivered them literally a second and a half latency delay, and just we were so much more successful in fighting fires in that sense. Now, recently, and again, I've been out of the military for a few years now. Um, they're not using the MQ-9 anymore in that capacity, um, which is unfortunate. But I think the state of California is moving towards finding a way, and it might be drone worthy, to deliver the same message or the same fire picture we were giving them, several years ago. So those are the
Wow.
2+1 that we were doing.
It's fascinating, and I'm always amazed by this idea that, someone in Riverside, California can be controlling a drone real time, 10,000 miles away,
Yep.
putting precision munitions on target.
Hmm.
It's mind-boggling. It must be incredible technology to make that happen.
It's incredible technology. It's delicate as well, right? You're depending on satellites and everything else in the world to make it work. But I'll tell you what, they're really good at what they do, and I think we'll get into this discussion a little bit later. But it's also tough to understand when you're sitting on the ground in a safe place, in this case, the state of California, but you're out there fighting the fight. There's some maybe loss of sense of like what's really happening out here because you don't know. You can't see it. You're not sure. So it's an interesting conversation, which I think we'll get into here over time.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great. Welcome. Great to have you. And second, and certainly not least, I want to introduce Navy Captain, retired, Jim Reining, my friend also and neighbor in beautiful Park City, Utah. Captain Reining had an exceptional United States Navy career. Jim, and I have to bring this up, made most notable by the fact that after 28 years on active duty, he flew airplanes for 26 of 28 years. And I think you may be the only Navy pilot to ever have pulled that off. And maybe at some point you could explain to everyone, and certainly the future aviators on this podcast, how you did that. Um, Jim spent the majority of his career as a test pilot, a naval test pilot, a high percentage of that out of Pax River, Patuxent River on the Chesapeake Bay, where he served as the program manager and commanding officer of the ACAT-1D Advanced Sensors Technology Program. He also served as the MQ-4C Triton Integrated Project Team Lead, the P-8A Poseidon Government Flight Test Director, and the Chief Engineer for the P-3 Orion Fleet. Pretty impressive career there. Jim earned his bachelor's in aerospace engineering for the United States Naval Academy. He also earned a master's in aerospace engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School, and he currently serves as senior vice president at STR, Science and Technology Research. Is that correct, Jim?
That is correct.
A cutting-edge defense contractor where he heads up their systems development division, and he's grown that division quite dramatically. I'd love to hear more about that. Welcome, Captain Reining. Great to have you with us today. I know many people, probably mostly from movies, know about the MQ-9A Reaper drone. What is the primary mission of the MQ-4C Triton drone?
Sure. Thanks, AB. Really happy you invited me to join you today. The MQ-4 is a derivative of the original NASA Global Hawk. So it's, as we watch and track drone technology, it was originally designed to do long-range surveillance, and then the Air Force took on Global Hawks and did about 3 different block versions, everything from, battlefield management and control to long-range surveillance and persistence. The Navy's version, the MQ-4, is to take over that maritime domain awareness task, where we can put a bird up for almost 24 hours and let it loiter, bring everything in, and downlink it to improve the operational picture for not only naval aviation, but naval surface, Air Force, Army, Marine Corps. So we've deployed it. It's actually deployed right now, and we're on the second generation of it that will be deployed in the next year.
Can a drone like that, certainly I know they can see the surface. There's a lot of maritime fog and weather. Can it see through weather? Can it see through water?
Yeah, there's from a radar perspective, obviously weather doesn't have an effect on us. From a visual and EOIR, one of the things that the Navy changed when they transitioned from the Global Hawk to the MQ-4 is we strengthened the wings and we gave it an ability to do a dip and profile so that we could address that very question. If there was clouds and we needed a visual identification, we can descend. Global Hawk originally wasn't designed with wings to enable that kind of flight profile. So the loads on the wings as you go lower would be too high to do that consistently over the life of a platform.
Interesting. Okay. Well, fantastic. Great to have you both. I want to get right into, the primary focus of today's session, and that is drones, unmanned aerial vehicles. And most specifically, it was just over a month ago that Ukraine, and I assume most of our viewers saw this on TV or read about it in the news, somehow put some drones in some shipping containers, move them inside of Russia's borders, and then at a predetermined time, launch these drones, had them attack Russian military bases, took out, at least from what I've heard, almost 30% of Russia's, air capability, airplanes on the ground. Um, it's just remarkable technology. Uh, and it just points to the rapid innovation that is going on in the world of aerial combat. And I would say, particularly in Ukraine, who's, about the size of Rhode Island, fighting, it would be like Rhode Island trying to defend itself against the US. And yet Ukraine has done such an incredible job. Sean, I know you have spent a lot of time flying and training with the Ukrainians. Would you just talk about, their innovative spirit? What was your reaction when you saw this attack?
So EB, I've had the pleasure of being over there several times. The first thing that dawned on me after about a week or so of being there the first time was their resolve. I mean, when I say that people are willing, regardless of age, to pick up arms and fight, that's exactly what it means. There's no pun intended in that. Anybody will pick up, anyone. And they are so proud of who they are, that you get a sense of understanding, why today they're still defending themselves after 2 years ish, roughly, of fighting with, like you said, the US versus Rhode Island. And they refuse in any way, shape, or form to quit. They refuse. They will not do that. And, can you find that resolve everywhere in the world? No, not necessarily. But in the Ukraine, you absolutely can. It's not just uh, this is kind of twofold. I think the Ukraine, and we help them understand how to defend themselves without giving away, any U.S. Not secrets, but U.S. tactics, if you will. We don't want to give too much, but we tried to help them understand. Hey, if you're going to set up a defense, here's how we might do it. And so they have set themselves up for that. But I think it also points to, and I know this is going to be on a podcast, but I'm retired now, so it points to a weakness in a country that everyone thought was going to be overpowering, and they just aren't. It's not very skilled, in my opinion, and Jim may have a different one. I don't think. I mean, there's plenty of people, right? They just keep throwing people at the problem. But from a tactical skill set, I'm not sure Russia stands up there like with China. That's a whole nother problem. Like that's a whole nother problem there. From the Ukrainian standpoint, like I said, you can go all the way back to World War II, AB, when you know, Hitler thought he was going to run over Kiev in a week. And it took him like 2 months because everyone stood up and fought, and that's exactly how they see what they do. There is so much pride in that country. That's the part that blew me away. Is
Yeah.
not. It wasn't just the military. when we were out having lunch or having dinner, everyone had the same resolve. And we weren't talking about fighting. It's just the discussions they had were, no, we will never. This is we. Oh, by the way, we don't speak Russian. We speak Ukrainian. I'm like, yep, fair. Yeah, you go to Ukraine and say hey, I can hear you Russian speaking. You might get tossed in the corner somewhere and get beat up. That is a very, in my opinion, and again, been there 3 times. I will never forget the resolve that team has, and now that we're watching it in action, which is very unfortunate, but they are defending themselves like nobody else. And when you're outweighed by that much and you're still standing, I don't think you need to say anything else.
Yeah. Well, Jim, this just kind of brings up a really important question in my mind, and I certainly don't equate our security with Russia's security, but man, if little Ukraine can slip these shipping containers and drones across the border into Russia and launch them and take out military bases, can that happen to us? Are we vulnerable on the same level?
Sure. I don't see how it couldn't happen, maybe. I mean, you look at just go to a global port and watch the containers come off. I mean, thousands of them an hour. And, we have all kinds of technology to scan, to do all kinds of things, but, it's a cost imposition. And the idea that others aren't going to follow suit would be a little bit naive, in my opinion. Now, when we talk about how we protect our bases, our layered defense, and our systems actually work much less than or much more than what we see our Russian counterpart do we have a better chance of defending against something like this? Absolutely. Do we need to continue to evolve the technology for the counter UAS? Oh, yeah. And there's lots of efforts going on in that regard right now. How do we continue to be both aggressive, which is employing these as weapons, and defensive in how do we protect our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen across the globe? Because it's going to proliferate.
How do you currently protect yourself against drones? I mean, how do we on the battlefield and how do we in the civilian worlds, how do we protect ourselves as drones against drones?
Yeah, I think there's a number. I mean, I think I was doing a little prep and, current counter UAS companies went from like 16 about a decade and a half ago to over 600 in this country alone right now. And
Wow.
we're not the country that leads in that. A lot of this drone technology, I mean, Israel is very deep in both offensive and defensive maneuvering, as you could imagine, with the situation that they face. China produces the most by far. They produce, capability. I don't know that they produce the back end smarts of, hey, how do I counter this? More so just the manufacturing might. But I think we are spending a lot of effort. There's multiple ways. There's the simple, old way. I take a stick and I beat it. I shoot it out of the sky, which is kind of just the brunt force. There's the how do I, with electronic warfare, take away the signal and cause the system to crash. Then there's the more advanced, kind of leading into some of the cyber things. Well, why do I want to take away the signal? Why don't I just capture the signal and turn it around and send it right back to where it came from? Then I get a dual use out of it. So, and there's more things that are out there that we're doing, including how do I have sense making 24/7 around the places I'm really concerned about? And how do I put that up temporarily and take it down and move it to the next place I'm worried about? So I think there's a lot of really good technology. The problem is if I can buy a drone for $1,000 and I'm taking, 10 million to defend a place, now I'm spending money on that, not spending money on other things. So it is a challenge for us. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. I mean, just in terms of VIPs, presidents, limousines, um, are we getting to a point in the United States? And certainly, if I were an Afghani, I would be very aware of this. But are we at a place in the United States where drones could be attacking us? Or if not today, is that around the corner? or are we staying ahead of that threat?
Well, I think, much like, I talk all the time about the evolution of the airplane from just simple basic reconnaissance to transportation to all the things we use airplanes for right now. Drones have been on that same path. The mission space, the availability is going to increase. So, I think it's a cat and mouse game like it always is with these kinds of technologies, is that we're going to advance, we're going to bring, I break it down into the airplane, I break it down into the sensors, and then the automation. And each of those have vulnerabilities that can be exploited. So we've got to be smart about how we go about that and how we can use a single solution for multiple threats.
Wow. John, any thoughts on that? How do we stay safe from this, what feels like a very real threat today?
Yeah, it's totally a real threat, and I echo Jim's sentiments, everything he said. I wanted to circle back to, how did the Ukraine get those drones inside of the borders of Russia? So, and I don't know the answer. I'm speculating. Um, but the U.S., in conjunction with many other countries, has one of the greatest intelligence services in the world, right? We hear most things happening. Do we get surprised every now and again? Sure. Look at 9/11. We get surprised. I don't think Russia has that capability. And if they do, they're not using it. And here's why. They're too, like, Putin is like, shoulders up. Nope, we're going to fight. And I don't need any of this other technology. I think, which by the way, does not mean we couldn't be attacked. It absolutely can happen because even with the best intelligence in the world, you could get something by us. And again, we use 9/11 as an example. However, I feel like we probably are a little bit more, what's the right word? Like we are looking a little more after, especially after what happened in Russia. My guess is we're listening a lot more. We're listening, we're hearing things, and when we hear things, we try to figure out where that's coming from, and we try to put two and two and three together and make a go. Okay, hey, guess what? This container coming from X might have something. I feel like we're ahead in that sense. Do I think that it could happen? Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're ahead of the world in that sense that we've cut off more attacks than most people can ever even dream about because we only hear about the ones that happen, which is unfortunate, obviously. However, if you want to talk about all the ones that have been stopped, you don't have enough time for the next 3 weeks to walk through every single attack that has been thwarted by the U.S. government in some fashion. So that's the only thing I want to throw out there. That was it.
Yeah, it is remarkable. And we definitely owe a debt of gratitude to many people working behind the scenes that never get any thanks. I couldn't agree with you more. Gentlemen, I want to switch subjects to a topic that I am so interested in and is so cool, certainly as a former fighter pilot. And that's this idea of loyal wingmen or CCAs, collaborative combat aircraft. And I was trying to describe this to someone the other day. And so just to set the table, I went into my favorite new friend, a ChatGPT, and asked, what is the definition of a loyal wingman or a CCA? And this is what I got. Loyal wingman drones, also known as collaborative combat aircraft, CCAs, are a rapidly developing technology in military aviation. These AI-powered unmanned aircraft are designed to operate alongside crewed fighter jets, such as the F-35 and future sixth-generation fighters, enhancing their capabilities and reducing risks to human pilots. So, Jim, I'm going to ask you this first. What is a CCA, collaborative combat airplane, in plain English? Do they exist today? Are they out there? What will their roles be? What will their roles be? And how will they operate today and in the future?
Thanks, AB. Yeah, they're out there. We're on increment one. The government, the US, gave contracts to 5 different manufacturers and then down selected to a version from General Atomics and a version from Anduril. they entered ground testing. They were built and now have passed a critical design review or in ground testing as of May of this year, with flights expected later this year. So we're absolutely 100% involved in it and moving forward. And we've done other things in the past. We've flown a Valkyrie with your favorite plane, the F-16, to demonstrate the technology, and the F-15 to cover Sean. So, it's not something that has just started recently, but the commitment to the loyal wingman has been ongoing. Actually, one of our allies, Australia, started with a version with Boeing over a year and a half ago. So they're probably a little bit further along with their program right now. But as I've been told many times, consider Australia our 51st state as a friend. They're one of our best. And so there's a lot of collaboration, pun intended, between the two countries on this topic. And again, go back to history. How do we start flying? We started flying as a solo jet, solo plane, quickly figured out, hey, it'd be better if I had a wingman with me because now I can employ some tactics that I can't do by myself. And you get to the 5th-gen fighters and you look at them and, they're not fighting in a section, they're fighting as a 4-ship. And this is the next extension of how do I fight as a 4-ship and how do I minimize the cost and the human life that's at risk. So I see it going full forward. I see the technology being pushed at the boundaries, much like we pushed the boundaries when we did the initial, flight tests into lots of different 4th and 5th-gen aircraft. So yeah, I see it going forward full speed.
Sean, if you had a loyal wingman flying with you, or you're flying a F-15 or F-16, or probably more likely an F-35, and you're single ship, or maybe you've got one other F-35 wingman with you, what role do you imagine a loyal wingman is going to provide? Or 3 loyal wingmen, or 4 loyal wingmen?
Yeah, or 7 or 8 or 10 or 12. Be
Right.
great. The more I have, the better. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Give me 16 if you want for that sake of argument. So no, I hear, and again, I'm not nearly as advanced in that particular part of the drone program. I understand where we're going. I like it. I think it evolves to a point where, in my opinion, I still think you need somebody as a human being needs to be in the space of the battle that's happening. And I only say that because of this. You can't replicate that on the ground. So you're sitting on the ground in a Connex box, flying an airplane. It's really difficult to feel or figure out what is actually happening. Can you be successful? Of course, no doubt. And if we can save, U.S. Navy / Air Force, Marines, Army folks, I'm all in. But I do feel like somebody has to be in that arena to get a feel for what's happening, because there may be times where, like I said, when you're sitting on the ground, MQ-9 is a perfect example, right? They're over in wherever they are, and that feeling is so different. You're just sitting in a Connex and you're trying to execute a mission, but you're not actually there. So I'm not saying we should eliminate, the whole. I think having the drone program, amazing. Give me as many as you can, but I would like to have 1 or 2 men and or women leading the parade, saying, "Okay, here's hey boss, here's where we're at right now." Talking to the RC, talking to whomever, to say, "Hey, this environment is changing rapidly. We might need to take a step back, like regroup, and then come back tomorrow." Versus, "Hey, I'm on the ground. I'm just slinging crap everywhere." So I think there's a great balance in there. And like I said, I love what Jim said. I love they're going forward with this thing. And trust me, I will take, if you want to give me 15 of them, I'm in. But I'll be the guy out there. I can't wait to be out there in front giving direction. That'd be awesome. But at the end of the day, I think you need somebody has to understand what's happening in the moment. I think. I could be wrong. So those are my thoughts, bud.
Yeah, I love it. And Jim, you're probably more advanced in AI than anybody else on this call. You know, we're not talking about drones that are going to be directed by somebody on the ground. We're talking about autonomous drones that are operating on AI based on inputs from their flight lead, for the sake of argument, an F-35 driver. What missions do you give them? Do you send one to go jam targets? Do you send another one to drop bombs on targets? What will they do?
Well, I think that's the great advantage of them, AB, is that, you know, you take your F-35, you take your modern day fighter, it's a jack of all trades, right? I've got to do SEAD, I've got to do offensive, I've got to do defensive air. Now I can load out one of my loyal wingmen with an entire ECM suite and say, okay, I'm going to position you ahead of me. So far, you're going to intercept any kind of jamming. I'm going to be able to react in time. I'm going to be able to shift my forces, which is my other loyal wingman. Maybe I load one up with weapons. Maybe I load one up with optical systems. You know, the ability to do all the things that you can't fit on a single jet, but in a single mission set is what's so powerful, in my opinion.
Can these loyal wingmen currently, I'm going to use the word, keep up? I mean, do they have the thrusties to fly at the kind of speeds our fighter jets are operating? I certainly don't think of that with traditional drones.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the drones get classified in a classification 1 through 5, and we're talking about class 1 drones here that are going to be able to cruise with our modern day fighters. Obviously, that incurs a cost in order to
Mm,
have that big of an engine, you know, to suck, squeeze, bang, and blow at the rate we need. So, you know, the whole part of this is how do we manage the cost? How do we reuse the intelligence, the sensors from platform A to platform B to platform C, so that we can build as many of these as, you know, all of us who have been there would love to have on our wing and love to be able to control.
yeah. I think I heard Sean say, I still like having a human out there, you know, one or two F-35 drivers or whatever the next sixth generation fighter is. Jim, do you think there's a chance we're heading to a world of aerial warfare where there are no humans in the sky?
Well, I think long term, yes. I mean, eventually we will, you know, be, you know, what's the most vulnerable limiting factor of a 6th gen fighter? It's the pink squishy servo we put in the seat. That's it. Aerodynamically, we could fly so many cool things, but as a human, we couldn't be in the airplane to do it. So, do I think it's close? No. We have a lot of challenges. Just how do I detail the mission? How do I call the audible? How do I switch up? How do I manage 16 people on my wings? You know, I mean, what's the interface to the guy in the seat doing this? All of those are challenges we've got to get through. But yeah, you know, again, I love to look at history as a guide. And, you know, back in World War II, the belief was the battleship was the queen of the Navy. Well, that kind of changed, didn't it? So, you know, do I think this is going to change? Sure, I think so. I think we'll eventually figure it out. You know, question, you know, is are humans still in control, or is, you know, whoever you know, that we've created now controlling? But, you know, that's kind of a dark sentence. But, you know, I think we'll get there. You look at all the things we can do. We have a lot of challenges, but it will happen.
Yeah. Sean, you touched on China earlier. Everything I read, and you two can correct me, please correct me, is that China is so far ahead of anybody else on certainly drone technology. I think there's a company in China that built 1 million drones this year. Uh, and should we assume that they are ahead of us on this, this loyal wingman technology, or is that our realm?
That's a tough question, AB. Here's what I'm going to equate from what I know in studying China. they have a very similar resolve as the Ukraine does. And so if we're going to find an advantage, that might be where they have an advantage. And Jim's going to probably step into the drone world, because I don't know, actually. I really don't know, from a drone standpoint, how far forward they are. What I do know is, in a world broad perspective, right, the US and China do not want to fight each other. This is one of those, like, this is a no-win situation. Everybody loses. And so I know it's hard. I'm trying to answer the question, but I don't have all the pieces I need to maybe answer it. So this is more philosophical. I think that the US and China have no interest in becoming, they'll do it in public, right? They'll chit chat and they'll talk on TV, but to actually get to an actual, hey, let's go, I don't think either side wants any part of it, because I know the US will stand tall, but I also know China, they are not going to just lay down. And like you said, are we behind in the drone world? My friend, I'm not sure. I haven't done enough studying on that piece. Jim, again, maybe he's up next and he'd be able to help me with that. But I know this: we don't. If we want to pick a country, that's not the country we want to fight.
Yeah.
Not for me anyway.
Yeah.
I got no interest in that.
Yeah.
Hence, I'm retired.
Jim, you must have a take on this.
Well, I think, I don't know. I mean, and even if I did know, I'm sure I couldn't say. But, when you think about the components of technology needed, AB, I think it's not just a single technology to be able to create a CCA and execute these missions. It's multiple technologies. It's sensor technology. It's, propulsion technology. It's, AI technology. One comment I can make, we heard about DeepSeek and all of a sudden we freaked out, like China's so far ahead of us. And now you kind of watch and you read the news, what is it, 2 months later? Oh, maybe they're not. Maybe it's not quite what we thought it was. I always caution China is a formidable adversary. They are a peer adversary. They are not a near peer. We have to consider them a peer adversary. So, do I think they're ahead of us in some areas? Absolutely. Do I think we're ahead of them in some areas? Absolutely. So, you know, uh, back to Sean's comment, it really comes down to resolve, and I'll bet on our country every time over anybody else. But like Sean, I'm retired. I'm not going to be at the pointy end, so I don't want to send our kids that way either.
And Jim, you just mentioned DeepSeek. Would you just clarify the meaning of DeepSeek for our audience?
Yeah, DeepSeek is an AI company that was rolled out in the media about 2 months ago as an example of where the US is losing this battle in AI. And when it first came out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, we're so far behind. Recent news reports have kind of put it back into focus that, well, maybe they're not as far ahead in some areas, but they've done some things better. And when we talk about AI, it's really, there's components to AI. So you've got to break those down into understanding what that is. And behind those components is the compute architecture that's necessary. And that compute architecture is different than what we think of as like a CPU, a computer processing unit versus a graphical processing unit versus the next generation. So have they challenged us on all those fronts? Absolutely, which is why they're now a peer, not a near peer.
Yeah. Um, Gentlemen, we're getting near the end of our time together. Before we go, first I'll ask you, was there anything on drones and loyal wingmen that I should have covered that we didn't? And then the second thing would be, what else is out there in the future of aerial combat that the audience might be interested in knowing about or hearing about what's potentially coming? And Sean, I'll start with you.
Okay, I'm back. So I don't think there's anything to add, AB. I think Jim covered the drone piece like very expertly, and again, I'm just pitching in. I didn't spend nearly as much time in that program as flying fighters, but I think the combination of the two makes for the most lethal force. And again, I'm not saying that in 20 years or 30 years from now that it won't be an all AI/drone force. I just feel the combination of the two are currently, as we speak, are most lethal. And what was the second part, Bud? I'm sorry. What was the second part?
Well, anything we didn't cover as far as the future of aerial combat, aerial
Mhm.
warfare that you imagine or is coming
Mhm.
down the line.
Yeah. So don't know, but imagine. I'm actually going to jump on Jim's bandwagon here. I imagine that we get 20 or 30 years down the road, and maybe AI gets to a point where it's actually not 100% reliable. That's never going to happen. But maybe it's 95% reliable, which, quite frankly, as Jim said earlier, we're asking a human being to be reliable. And for the most part, we absolutely are. But are we, do we have, can we fallible? Can we be fallible? Sure, we can. Maybe we get to a point where someone figures out that we have built a program that only allows for a very small latency, maybe a 1 or 2% problem. Like, hey, I made the wrong decision 1 or 2% of the times, unlike the human being who might make it 10% of the times. So no, I think where Jim is talking about we're going, um, probably long past my lifetime. I hope enough to get in a big battle. But if we do, um, currently, I'd love to see us stay joint. I'd like a human being in there with CCA. I think it'd be amazing. 40 years from now, they're going to find technology that we didn't even know existed. They're going to find something that we didn't know. And there's going to be another smart kid out there, whoever it is, wherever it is, they're going to build the next program that says, hey, by the way, I've got us to 98%. I will not fail at this percentage. And so if we can get to that point and we can avoid human loss, who wouldn't be in?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be in.
I love it.
Yep.
Jim, thoughts on the subject?
I'm going to close with a couple thoughts, AP. First of all, I thank you for having me here, and I will tell you it's most timely. Uh, the president just signed a presidential action called Unleashing American Drone Dominance, signed on June 6th. Last week in Alaska, the Defense Innovation Unit and numerous U.S. manufacturers went up there to
Yeah, I read about
play
this.
with all the drones, to test it, to do all these kinds of things. Why Alaska? Because all the emissions wouldn't we disrupt civilian traffic, we cause all kinds of issues. So I think you're hosting this is most timely. This is an issue that's at the front of many people's minds. So thank you for doing that. I think that's a great, and there's lots of things for people to read going forward. Where do I think we're going? I think, and we've seen it. We are more connected than ever. And, you know, fighter world is going to be more connected than ever. The sensors coming into the platform are well beyond what's on the platform. How do we fight that? What's our moral obligation? What's our rules of engagement? How do they change? And this kind of goes to where Sean was talking about, that it takes more people. Unmanned is not uncrewed. It's just no man in the airplane. The people on the ground, and Sean can probably speak to this from experience, far outnumber the number of people in a single airplane in order to make this all happen. So we've got a lot of things to think about as we go forward. And what does that architecture, construct of decision making have to be? And it's going to put different challenges on our pilots of the future. Unlike us, where it was pretty much see and point and click, they're going to have a lot more to deal with than whatever I had to deal with. So thank you again. I think it's been a great discussion.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for joining. Great to see both of your faces. Great to hear your thoughtful comments. And hey, maybe we can get together on another one like this or a different subject in the future.